Welcome to Blind Man with a Backpack in conversation with Lou Plunkett.
We drive the graveyard train through the fire and rain. We drive the graveyard train when we come calling for you.
One thing I discovered as my sight loss got progressively worse was how difficult it could be, or it can be, to access information online, and how easy it could be to feel isolated when going online on things like social media, especially when people are sharing photos and images, family photos and so forth. There is a growing movement pushing for better access to the digital world for those of us who are visually impaired. And my guest today, Lou Plunkett, is very much involved in that movement through her business, Impact with Lou. Now, I'm fascinated to get into this conversation, and I'm certain we will end up veering into many, many other areas. So let's just crack on. And without further ado, welcome, Lou.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
You're welcome. Well, it's been really nice, and it's been one of those where you and I we've swapped a few messages, following each other on social medias and things like that. And I'm really pleased to have you on because I just think the whole world of accessibility is just it's a fascinating world, and I think people should understand more of what is happening by not having by not providing accessible content. What you're closing the door to such a large demographic of people, aren't you?
Oh my goodness me. Yes, you are. And it's definitely something that needs to be on every single person's radar, but unfortunately it isn't. And if it is, quite often they see it as a minefield. They don't want to step on anybody's toes. They don't want to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing. So quite often it's easier just to do nothing about it at all and just pretend that digital accessibility isn't a thing,
Yeah.
and nobody's going to call me out on it.
Yeah. Bury your head in the proverbial sand, isn't it? And just
Yes.
just just hope that it will go away. And yes, indeed. So let's start at the beginning. We'll definitely get into that. But let's start at the beginning. So please just introduce yourself. Who are you? What's your bit of a background, eye conditions, and so forth?
Okay, I now want to break into song. Do Re Mi from Sound of Music. I'm not going to pierce anybody's eardrums with that. So I am a wife and a mum of two boys. They are 18 and nearly 13. And I have got Stargardt's disease, which is a juvenile form of macular degeneration. So it's genetic, progressive, incurable, and there's no treatment for it currently. I was diagnosed at the age of 15 after lots and lots of trips to my optician and toing and froing between my optician and the eye clinic and being fobbed off. I'm an only child, and it was very much the narrative that neurotic parents, all your eggs in one basket, you're worrying about things. And then I became, and I quote the consultant, an enigma. They didn't quite know what was wrong with me, but we'll see you in 6 months' time in the clinic. And it wasn't until my parents got quite stroppy with the
Yeah.
consultant and said, look, surely there must be some other testing that you could do, that they then agreed to do electrodiagnostic testing,
Okay.
which back in 1994 was conducted in a records cupboard in my local hospital and sort of a real makeshift booth. They'd sort of put dark sheets up at the windows and at the door, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's like electrodes stuck on your head and sort of find
Hmm.
in your eyes, and you sit in the dark and you have to look at lots of lights flashing and dancing. And they had a newly qualified consultant who had come up from Moorfields
Hmm.
to join the team in Norwich, where I live, and he was the only person actually qualified to interpret those results.
Right.
And the consultant rang my mum up just before Christmas in 1994 and said, I'm really, really sorry, but you were right all along. Your daughter's going blind. There's nothing we can do, but have a lovely Christmas and we'll see you in clinic in January. And that was it.
Okay. Right.
And that was back in the days we didn't have Google.
Yeah.
We had one computer at school which was connected to the internet. So you didn't have a smartphone that you could whip out and just search up what this thing
Hmm.
was. Everybody shut down over Christmas and New Year. There was no information.
Yeah.
You couldn't look it up in the library. So we were just like left completely stranded until we then went to the clinic in January saw this consultant who'd interpreted the results, and essentially I
Yeah.
was told, well, there's no treatment, there's no cure. I can't do anything for you. You just have to go on and get on with life. You can't fly a plane, you can't drive a train. Other than that, you're kind of good to go. Oh, and you can't drive either because you've lost too much sight. Off you go.
Right.
And that was it. And I was 15. I had a part-time job.
Hmm.
I was saving my money for driving lessons and for my first car. And it was literally like the rug had been pulled out from under my
Yeah.
feet. So yeah, that was my experience back then, and by all accounts, I don't think things have improved particularly well with bedside manner from eye consultants and ophthalmologists when they deliver such devastating news.
I, you say that I had a hilarious one. So my I had the same. Is it the electroretinogram? The
Yes.
test that you had to, yes, the lovely. I refer to it as the Clockwork Orange exam. You know, all that's missing is Beethoven's Fifth playing in the background, and it would be exactly that reprogramming of your brain. Yeah, no, I had that done at Moorfields, and it was almost in like a little dungeon room that they had there.
Yeah.
But after all of the exams and everything, I ended up back at my local cottage hospital, not far from me. And I sat down with him, and he looked at my notes, and he looked at me, and he looked at my notes again. And he looked at me, and it was just like, "Why are you here?" Slightly
You
odd
tell
question.
me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, I've got this transformative eye condition, which was probably going to mean I'm going to go blind. But is that he was a lovely chap. He was a really, really nice guy. But it was just the way he looked at me again and went, "No, I know that, and that's I get all of that. But why are you here specifically in this hospital seeing me today?" I was like, again, I started to go, "Well, I've got this eye condition which I found out, and I need to now be referred back into the NHS, and I need to know what to do." And he like, "That's great, yeah, but I deal with simple things. I deal with cataracts and glaucoma. You're complicated. I can't help you here. You need to go to Oxford. You need to go to somewhere which actually they've got the specializations to support you and to continue to monitor and continue to work things." But he was, then he looked through and went, "I know her. She's a lovely, yeah, the consultant in Oxford who leads all of this. I'll send her a letter. I'll get you referred up there, and we can get you going from there, and we can get things moving and everything." And since then it's been fine. But it was just, I'll always remember that first meeting with him.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, okay. Thankfully, you sort of got to
Yeah.
have a sense of humor with these things, don't you?
Honestly, you do have to have a sense of humor because if not, you just sit and cry otherwise. And
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, there have been days when I have done that, but
Mm-hmm.
on the whole, just inject some humor into everything, kind of see the funny side of it, and it just helps to oil the wheels of life.
It
We ended
does.
up asking for a second opinion because it had taken at least 2.5 years to get that diagnosis. So we thought,
Right.
want to make sure they've actually got it right. So our GP referred us down to Moorfields,
Mm.
and I saw back in the day it was Professor Bird. He was absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Sat and explained, didn't rush us at all. And I've been under Moorfields care ever since.
Mm.
Yeah, I kind of it's kind of an element of distrust with my local hospital, I think, because they don't see it very often.
Yeah.
They then don't really realize and kind of fully understand what they're dealing with. So when I was pregnant with my second son, I had a very sudden deterioration of
Mm.
vision in one eye. So I ended up in the A&E in the eye department and got seen. And they did some tests and did some scans and images and things. And then went through and saw a consultant. And they're like, "Oh, we need to do surgery." And I'm just like, "What? What do you
Eh?
mean we need to do surgery?" They're like, "Yes, yes, we need to operate." I'm like, "Okay." So I went back to Moorfields. They did all the scans themselves and had a look, and they were just like, "No, it's just the natural rippling effect of the membrane on the
Right.
retina, and it will just even itself out. It's possibly induced by the pregnancy hormones. Nothing to worry about whatsoever. Absolutely no operation needed." I'm like, "Thank you so much."
And actually, the local eye hospitals, I don't know about what it is with you are, but here, a lot of their specialization has been outsourced now. So it goes to either the Circle or the Spire or one of the local private hospitals, and that's where they have the eye clinic. So almost eye casualty is they don't even have much, or there's less expertise there now
Mm.
because so much of it has been outsourced to other partners. Now, that might be the right thing to do, and I don't think this is. It's probably best not to get into that conversation
No.
right now.
Moving on.
Yes, moving on exactly. But at least you've got, the likes of Moorfields, Oxford Eye Hospital, all of those places. Their level of care is absolutely phenomenal, and they've got the equipment, they've got and the knowledge and the expertise on how to support. And it just I've found a couple of times when I've had a bit of a blip, and the conversation has been, I've got reached out to my local ECLO the ECLO at Oxford, and they've gone, come here, don't we know what we've got your history, we've got everything. Come and see us here. Don't worry about going to Reading. Just come straight up and see us. So yeah, it's nice to know that you've got that kind of backstop and that support there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
makes, it's like that security net blanket, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, indeed. So you've had it from a relatively early age, and it sounds like it's been something which has had quite an impact on you from quite an early age as well. So how has that sort of shaped how's that, dare I say it, it's a very odd question, but I'm intrigued to know sort of how that has then shaped, dare I say, your career and how you moved forward with that.
No, that's a very valid question. So I was 15 when I was diagnosed. I'd started on my chosen GCSE subjects. So I was busily studying. And, back then I could still read
Hmm.
print, small print. I had a magnifying glass. So obviously I got referred to the low vision aids clinic and ended up with a whole heap of different items to kind of try. Most of them looked like something out of science fiction. And as a 15-year-old, I'm like, I'm not using that. I
Yeah.
look like a complete weirdo. So there were items that never got used. There were a pair of low vision aid glasses that still to this day, 30 years on, I still use.
Right.
Um, and I've tried other things subsequently as kind of technologies have developed, but I always go back to them because they just work really, really well for me.
Hmm.
Now, what I can see through them now as my vision has deteriorated has greatly changed. So I used to be able to read a normal print book through them.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of picture books to my children. Now it's just my mobile phone with the font set really, really large
Hmm.
and it's backlit really, really brightly. That's all I can use them for now. I can't see anything else to read through them anymore.
Yeah.
So, I would have a magnifying glass. I had a monocular, which is like a little telescope to help me see the board at school.
Yeah.
Teachers were really great, but I well, I say I was an introvert. I still am an introvert. I was really
Hmm.
shy. I didn't like being the center of attention. So I would do anything I possibly could to avoid drawing attention to myself. And that has kind of gone throughout my adult life. I left school, got my GCSEs, I went to college, did A levels, and then I didn't really know what to do with
Yeah.
my life. I'd been very sporty and been in sports teams, but as my sight had deteriorated, it's not much good being on a netball team or a rounders team if you can't actually see the ball, or playing badminton and not being able to see the shuttlecock. And it's just like, well, this isn't working. And at the time, I
Hmm. Hmm.
didn't really understand why it wasn't working. I just stopped playing.
Yeah.
So I took up swimming just for leisure initially, but kind of got talent spotted, I guess,
Yeah.
and encouraged to join local swimming clubs and do more training and then try some competitions. So, kind of come 1998, 1999, I was in training to try and get into the GB Paralympic squad for the Sydney 2000 Games,
Yeah.
which I came very, very close to, but then ME or chronic fatigue syndrome
Right.
struck.
Oh, shit.
So 26 years on, I still live with that as well. So balancing a chronic illness and, you know, being a mum now and a
Yeah.
wife, running a home, and et cetera, et cetera. So a career for me never really happened because it wasn't worth kind of the energy juggle to try and
Mm, mm.
balance having a job, but then also still having a life outside of that job, because if
Yeah.
not, I would come home and just have to rest and sleep.
Mm,
It's just like that just isn't going to work. So my husband's like, I'll support us as a family or as a couple to start with and as a family, and I would look after the home and bring up the children.
yeah.
So it wasn't until my boys got older, um, and sort of in the last, so anyway, when I hit 40 is kind of when things changed for me. And
Right.
I stopped hiding my disability
Yeah.
because I'd had symbol cane training when I was 15
Hmm.
and felt hugely conspicuous being a teenager, as you do at that age,
Yeah. Yeah.
not wanting people to look at me and everything else. And
And a cymbal cane is such a weird thing, isn't it? It's like
it
you walk
is.
along with it. I was doing a talk yesterday to a local WI group, and I showed them my cymbal cane, and it's like it just it feels really odd because you're just walking along and you're sort of holding this thing in front of you, and it just
It almost feels like just a matchstick.
yes, yeah, it does.
It
Yeah.
feels really insignificant. Um, and a lot of people, they may get given one by their local authority when they get registered, but if they get no training on how to
Hmm.
use it, you kind of, all sorts of things. My mum has been out and she's like, I've seen somebody walking along pointing out horizontally in front of them. She's like, they're going to cause injuries to other people or to themselves.
Yeah, it's going to take
And
someone's eye out.
yeah, because they've had no training on how to use it and how to help you go up and down steps and like measure the heights of curbs and things. All of these things take learning, but if
Hmm.
they're not trained, it's kind of pretty pointless.
Yeah.
So anyway, I had symbol cane training. I then ended up my mobility instructor. I think they're called Rovies now, but went off
Yeah.
and I had somebody else who was a Londoner and he was male and he was like, "You're making yourself really vulnerable. You're a young female." And having one of those, you're making yourself to be a target. So essentially, my cane went away in the cupboard and it didn't come out again until I turned 40,
Right.
which is a very, very, very long time.
Yeah.
And I winged it. I learnt strategies to kind of support myself, not like
Hmm.
consciously, you just kind of develop these skills.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
Sort of, dropping your foot down off the edge of a curb to kind of work out, oh, how deep is it? How long
Hmm.
does it take until my toes touch the road? That type of thing.
Yeah.
And I turned 40 and my dad had passed away, and I kind of just had this epiphany moment. Thought, why am I hiding this?
Yeah.
I am bumping into people, I'm bumping into lampposts, I'm tripping up curbs, tripping down curbs.
Hmm.
I need to stop being so stubborn and just get over myself. So out came the symbol cane from the cupboard. I
Yeah.
kept it and I used it around my house. I could remember my training and I very quickly felt, oops, that it wasn't long enough for me. I was
Yeah.
like, this isn't right. So I did a bit of research and I got myself a guide cane, which is a bit longer and it's
Hmm.
got the marshmallow tip, roller tip on the end. So you
Yeah.
can use it along the ground, but not as you would a long cane.
Yeah.
And I then booked myself onto an RNIB living with sight loss course.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? It will be good for me just, in case there's anything new that has come along that I'm not
Hmm.
aware of, etc., etc. Oh my gosh, that was a complete game changer.
Yeah.
It's like, how have I lived this long without realizing that I could squirt toothpaste directly onto my tongue rather than trying to get it onto my brush?
What? Sorry,
Yeah.
I haven't heard this one.
Have you
What?
not?
No.
So I have my own toothpaste now that nobody else uses. So I just squirt a pea-sized amount on my tongue,
Yeah.
smush it around my teeth with my tongue, then stick the toothbrush in and brush my teeth. No more trying to get it on the end of a toothbrush on the head, which is just disaster. You end up wasting so much and getting
You
it all over.
do. This is a transformation. I'm gonna.
Absolutely. And I was just like, why have I never thought of this before? And
Yeah.
it was things like silicone utensils to use in the kitchen, but choose a really bright colour that contrasts with your worktops or with
Hmm.
your pans so that you can see them
Yeah.
with the residual vision that you've got left. So I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't think of that. So I've now got bright, literally fluorescent yellow um, silicone cooking implements,
Yeah.
which I use. And it's just little snippets because I think the course was delivered by a lady who is completely blind.
Right.
Um, and obviously she's got full lived life experience of living without sight,
Hmm.
that all these little nuggets came to light, and it was just like, wow, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
then the lady there from the local sensory support team who provide cane training in
Hmm.
our area. And I said to her, I said, I use a guide cane. I said, but taking my son to school, particularly on a winter's morning when the sun is really low
Yeah.
and the paths are damp, I said, there's so much glare. I said, I literally cannot see anything in front of me.
Hmm.
I said, but if I have long cane training, that's kind of it. I can't ever go back and use a symbol cane or a guide cane. She's like, absolutely not. You can use whatever you feel that you need to at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a revelation for me. I'd never considered that before. So I went on the waiting list for long cane training, then COVID hit.
Yeah. Okay.
So kind of had to wait until sort of things were a little bit more open. So we did
Yeah.
our cane training outside wearing masks, and I've never looked back. So my long cane is all I use,
Yeah.
and I don't leave the house without it, or without him, should I say, because his name is Michael
It's
Caine.
Michael Caine. Yes, I
No,
love that. See
you
that
don't
that
mess with
is
me.
no, and see that's the thing. It's the whole of naming your mobility aids. You know, naming your canes. And there's so many visually impaired people who do, don't you? And it's just like,
And it's
well,
having that positive relationship with it,
yes,
rather than it just being, oh, it's this hideous thing that I've got to use because I've got no other choice.
yeah,
Actually, it's positive. It's allowing you to still maintain that level of independence that you want.
yeah, yeah. It does. It really does. See, I mean, my original. So I've got, oh God, I've got four because you end up collecting. In fact, five if you include my symbol cane. Um, and it was I don't know if you remember in the late '90s. It was the TV series Spaced, and it was before Shaun of the Dead and all of the Simon Pegg and Nick Frost TV series movies that they brought out. Um, they had a TV series originally called Spaced, and one of the characters he had his off. He was, and neither of them were visually impaired, but he had. There was one episode specifically, and he was talking about rough rambling. So my off-road cane ended up being called Mike, and then so my street cane, because he was a skateboarder and stuff like that, was Tim. So I had Tim and Mike for a long time, and then Mike ended up getting bent and beaten and battered, so I ended up having to replace Mike. So now it's Dory because she just keeps swinging, just keeps sweeping.
Love it.
Yeah, yeah, and it just but they've got personalities. They all do these own things, and they all do stuff. And actually, as you say, they're not necessary evils. They are integral to our independence. And all right, most of the time they now sit in in a converted a beer can at the bottom of my stairs as like a little umbrella stand, because I grab Chester's harness most of the time. But they're always there, and if I'm going out for an evening, or if I'm going out for a time when I know it's not appropriate to have him, or even if I go for a swim or anything like that, the canes are still there, and they still perform such a valid part of life and maintaining the independence. So yeah,
Yes,
I think they all need to be named. Um, there's the whole thing about, would you ever get a coloured one? Because I see some people and
uh,
they would have like sparkly ones, or they'll get a pink one or a black one or something like that. Would you ever go down that sort of coloured cane route?
no, I wouldn't. And I know on particularly for children's canes, they do them in a variety of different colours. And
Mm,
I don't necessarily agree with that because I think society has enough trouble sometimes recognizing what a white cane is,
yeah,
let alone one that's a different colour. I know when I've been to festivals with my husband and my family, or I've been to we went to my husband and I went to a 90s evening, or 90s night, 90s evening, it sounds very posh. It's it's a fantastic live band that play all the fantastic dance hits from the 90s.
yeah,
Um, we bling Michael Caine up with glow sticks, and my husband will cable tie glow sticks on so that people can see me coming. And it's just, just And he is the biggest glow stick in the room because
Yeah,
I'm like waving it around, obviously carefully in the air.
of course, yes.
At a festival we'd done that, and I had a lady come up to me and she asked me if it was a metal detector, and I'm just like, no, it's not. And I explained what it was, and she was absolutely mortified.
Yeah.
But and I've had older people of an older generation ask me, is it a trundle wheel? No. And I explain what it is, and they're like, oh, I never knew that. And there's just this massive, I think, black hole in society and in education.
Hmm.
Disability as a whole isn't taught.
No, it's not.
Nobody knows anything about it unless you've got personal lived experience, whether it's from yourself, a family member, a close friend. Most of what people pick up is what is portrayed in films, in TV, in the media,
Hmm.
or what they see on social media. And often, if it's films and TV, it can be the extreme,
Yeah.
which then creates the wrong image because sight loss is a spectrum,
Hmm.
just as every other single disability is a spectrum.
Yeah.
Just because you've met one person who is blind, in air quotes, doesn't mean that the next blind person that you meet is going to see the world in the same way. And there's just so many misconceptions around disability, and that in itself creates barriers.
Yeah.
So yes, kind of looping back to what I do now is training for businesses on
Yeah.
how to create accessible online content, predominantly social media, because it's not good enough.
No.
And I've having conversations with various people who work in marketing or in graphic design, and accessibility isn't even part of the learning for web
Yeah.
developers, web designers, graphic designers. They don't even touch on it. And you think in this day and age, it's 2025, it
Hmm.
should be a whole big, juicy, meaty module all by
Yeah.
itself. Not even
Well,
meant.
and especially because there are, there are guidelines. There is
Yes.
it's the web content accessibility guidelines, and it's on version 2.2 now as well. So it's not as if it's a new thing,
No.
but there are, and I think in the US under the ADA, it's so the Americans with Disability Act, there are, well, it was getting close to making it all companies had to comply, of course.
We won't go
We'll
there.
see what happens there, but
Even I find
yes,
in the
yeah,
States.
let's
Even
moving on.
part of the Equality Act 2010,
Yeah,
there's elements of that which says that your business, whether it's your premises or online, needs to be accessible.
but see, with that, it's only public services.
Yeah,
That's what I find awful
and
with the
it's
Equality Act bit.
it's
Yeah,
lots of grey areas within it, which isn't good enough. And then obviously
no.
the European Accessibility Act coming into force in June
Hmm.
this year. And again, people are like, oh, I know, well, we're not in the EU anymore. It still applies to the UK.
It does. Yeah, exactly. So going on, you mentioned about your your training and things. So it's called Impact with Lou is your company, isn't it? That
Yes,
you
it
provide.
is.
So where did that come from? What's the sort of where did that start?
It was a baptism of fire off the back of a chance conversation that I was having with a kind of a business strategist. So at the time, I had set up a Facebook support group for women with sight loss and or chronic illnesses because I had discovered that pretty much all of the so-called support groups that were available online, either for sight loss or for chronic illnesses, were very negative and quite
Hmm.
toxic places. And the focus was very much on what people could no longer do and how unfair life was and why me. And it was just this really negative narrative.
Yeah,
And I thought, you know what, if somebody with a new diagnosis goes into that group looking for support, they're going to come out of there feeling worse than when they went in.
yeah,
So I thought, right, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to create a positive space where we focus on what we can still achieve in spite of.
brilliant.
And it was received really, really well. But it took up a lot of my time and
Yeah,
my energy, of which I've got limited resources. So I was having a chat with this lady and, saying, looking at ways in which I could potentially monetize it. Didn't want to get rich, but a little bit of
yeah,
turn is fair enough. It wasn't out of the way. And I made this comment to say, it's so frustrating that social media is really inaccessible. People just don't understand all the different barriers that are in place.
Hmm.
And she's like, just say that again. So I did. And she's like, her and her business partner, she said, we have worked for years with businesses all around the globe, from tiny startups to big corporations. None of them are talking about this. This isn't on anybody's radar. This is what you need to be doing. You are the perfect person to go out there with this message because
Hmm.
you are living and breathing it. And literally 48 hours later, she designed my logo, my templates, all my graphics for social media.
Yeah.
There you go, off you go. And I'm just like, okay then. So it's been very much a learning as I go and sort of feeling my way through,
Yeah.
but finding the right support with the right people and like business mentors, trainings, that type of thing, in order to kind of help me on my journey.
Yeah.
But it's a massive thing amongst the disabled entrepreneur community that businesses expect you to do the work for free
Yeah.
because you're disabled.
Hmm.
And it's just like, well, we have bills to pay as well.
Yeah.
And, we still need to put food on the table and feed our kids. Yeah, it's an odd one. It really is very odd.
Yeah. It
Small
is. Yeah.
with they've got a campaign called the Lilac Review,
Hmm.
which is a 2-year independent government-backed review looking into the barriers faced by disabled entrepreneurs in the UK. And they are making huge strides. So there is now a disability finance code for disabled entrepreneurs, which came about literally 8 months after the review started. So they are doing great things, and it's been brilliant to be a part of that and kind of see how things have evolved and what is changing. So yeah,
And that is fantastic because it is what you need because there are so many people, so many disabled people out of who aren't in paid employment, but there's yeah, I look at the numbers. I mean, I think it was like there's nearly 60% of disabled people are out or are in work. And when you come to sight loss, now a few years ago that was touted around 24, 25%. Now the latest figures that I saw from somebody are it's just over 40. Now I'm dubious if that's actually the case, that it's gone up by so much in a relatively short period of time. But either way, it is below it's half of what the somebody who is fully sighted or somebody who has no disability would be, and it's well below the average that it is for just the disabled community as a whole. So we need to find a way of being able to support ourselves and our families and everything. And so the only thing that you do end up having to turn to is self-employment and entrepreneurism. And the thing is, we are so good, and I say we, I mean see disabled, but especially people with sight loss, are so good at finding ways around things
yeah,
because we have
problem
to adapt
solving.
to a world which isn't designed for us and very often won't even consider changing for us. So
No,
actually we have to adapt and we have to work to and finding ingenious ways of making it happen and whether that's the physical environment or the technical or the online environment, it doesn't, it's the same thing there. So that's great. So it sounds like, and that's absolute phenomenal news that things are moving forward and there's better support because as you say, we have so much experience ourselves, and then we're just expected to partake or pass on this wonderful knowledge that we've brought and this experience for absolutely nothing, and almost we've they're doing us a favor by allowing us
yes.
to partake our knowledge and experience with them. So what does the business actually do? You provide us accessibility training, but what does that mean?
So I work with businesses to train their staff on how they can create accessible social media content. That's kind of my speciality.
Mm.
I can provide audits on social media. So if people just want a kind of an accessibility audit of what they're currently doing before they then choose to want to kind of upgrade and up level to learn a bit more, I
Yeah.
can do that. I can also give website accessibility audits, but from the perspective of somebody landing on your site who has got sight loss. Can I navigate round using my screen reader?
Mm.
And more often than not, the answer is no.
Yes.
And it can just be down to the simple fact that the hamburger menu icon is in the wrong place. And people don't know that because the web developer doesn't know it when they've designed your site for you. Why would they? Because it's not been taught to them.
Yeah.
And
And
it's all these little things, but they add up to, it's like building this brick wall of
mm,
layer upon layer upon layer of different barriers. And you get so far and you think, no, I'm not doing this.
no.
You search for a product or a service on Google, you go to the first hit. If that website is inaccessible, I'm back to Google, I go to the next hit.
Yeah.
And you just work your way through the results until you find a website that you can access.
Mm.
And it might mean that that product or that service is costing you more, but because you can then independently purchase that product or service yourself, you'll pay it.
You will. Yeah.
And
No, I agree.
and when businesses realize that they are missing out, and effectively it's like turning away 1 in 5 people, whether you
Mm.
are a bricks and mortar business or purely online, 1 in 5 people. So if you had 1 in every 5 that comes to your premises, whether that's virtual or on the high street, and you shut the door in their face and said, no, not today, thank you,
Yeah.
you wouldn't do it.
No, no, you wouldn't. And I think you're right. And it is quite often accessibility is
Is that
it's
bolt
picked up. It's a bolt on. It's an afterthought, isn't it? It's a oh, hang on, we haven't done this, and we need to then go back, and then you need to reverse engineer it. And of course, I mean, working in software
much easier
development
to get it
myself,
from the start?
it costs money if you haven't done it at the beginning and to have to bolt it on afterwards. But what people then do, or what I find quite often people will do, is they'll think about it and go, so the navigation is you click here, you click, or whatever to go through. As I now take a step back from that and think about where are you trying to get that? Where is that user trying to get to? And think about it that way. And what's the most suitable path to get there? And think, and it's more not how can you visually get somewhere, but what's the easiest sort of pathway for somebody to find that objective, whether it's a product or service or a piece of information or whatever that can go. Actually thinking about the process and the end result, not the mouse clicks. And that, it's where we fall over. So making sure that you have headings, because then,
Being correctly labeled.
yes, headings being correctly labeled, links being there, not, links being in the right place, because I don't know about you, but I use JAWS as my screen reader. So it's called Fusion, which combines like a screen reader and a magnifier on my laptop. And the first thing I do whenever I go to any website is I bring up my links list dialog, and that just lists all of the links on that page, or I'll bring up my headings list, which again means that I can then go through and I can see exactly what the headings are on the page, and then I can, start to go and start to find what I'm looking for through that. If I open up a page and I bring up my headings list and there are no headings on the page, then well, it's a non-starter for me. So as you say, then it's back to Google and it's going down to the next one on the list. Um,
And the other thing I find
yeah.
as well is when companies think, oh, we'll just stick an accessibility toolkit plugin on, that'll solve the problem.
Hmm.
It doesn't. It can only work with what is on the website originally.
Yes.
So if you've got poor color contrast in the first place, that toolkit, that plugin is just trying to make that a bit better.
Yeah.
And it doesn't solve the problem. In actual fact, sometimes it can just make it
It
worse.
does. Yes.
But people
Yeah.
are just like, oh yeah, I put that on there and my site's now accessible.
Hmm.
No, it doesn't work.
And it's a waste of money, actually. In a way, in a big way, it's a waste
Sometimes
of your
they're
money.
free, and it's just like, oh yeah, no, I've stuck this on. It hasn't cost me anything. But yeah, it doesn't solve it. And
Hmm.
it's that lack of education and awareness again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always comes down to that and comes
I,
back to that.
it does. It does. Yeah. So come on, let's talk about some. You mentioned about sort of like inaccessible images. We've talked about making sure that headings are in the right way and things. So one big question that I have, and I always have a bit of a uh, uh, internal monologue, and I flip between the two. Is whenever I produce, so obviously I produce a lot of stuff with a lot of visual content on Instagram and on Facebook and so forth, and all of it I err towards adding image descriptions into the body of the text. I don't tend to use alt text um,
Mm.
because not in my sort of my view is that, well, actually, not everybody can be seeing the alt text. Not everybody knows that the alt
Exactly.
text is there. And so if it's in the content, and also it helps to build the awareness as well that people need these kind of descriptions. But it's passing over to the expert, not wanting to put you on the spot, but
No pressure.
yeah,
No,
what's
it's
your
right.
view?
There's some people are aware of alt text, some people aren't. Some people use it just to drop in a JPEG file, for
Mm,
example, if it's on a website, or a few random SEO keywords. Or people think, oh, I've put my image description, it's in the alt text. And then when I tell them that the only people that can access alt text are people who use a screen reader, and not all visually impaired people use a screen reader.
no.
I didn't for years and years and years. In fact, I've only embraced it in the last few years because I'm stubborn. And it's just like, no, I don't need to use that.
Hmm.
But I do now. So you are doing exactly the right thing by including it in the body of the post. So whether, caption post, whatever you want to call it,
Mm,
popping it at the end. Because as you say, it raises awareness for other people. It can start that conversation. Why have you got that there?
yeah.
And, I say to people, if you want to like belt and braces, write your image description, highlight, copy and paste it into the alt text, and
Yeah.
then you've covered both fields. So if a person who is using a screen reader is scrolling, they can hear what that image is and then decide if they actually want to listen to the post or not.
Mm,
That's kind of their only option for like skim reading, as it were.
yeah, as it were, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, definitely. No, that's good. And actually, sometimes you can make some real comedy into the alt text as well. I mean,
Oh,
I love. I don't know if you follow the likes of sort of Sarah Millican, and
yeah.
her image
Vision head
descriptions are
smashers.
hilarious.
I love
Yes.
that expression.
Yeah,
I'll take that any
exactly.
day.
No, I know, and it is. It's. You can. It doesn't
It
need to
doesn't
be all
have to be
fact.
really serious.
No,
No,
exactly. And we do have senses of humor, and so sometimes it's fun to make, especially if it's a funny image or something like that. It's good to add that little bit more to it. I mean, you look at some of the some of the social media sites, and they give you a little bit of guidelines around what should and shouldn't be included within the alt text. And very much it's like three or four keywords, no more than like 100 or 150 characters. It should be short and snappy and things. But
it's
I
like,
I
no.
I disagree.
I'm like, sorry, Meta. No, that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
whenever I upload alt text onto the Book of Faces, then
Hmm.
I always get a red angry sign
Yeah,
that's it's too long, you've exceeded your characters. I was like, well, I'm just going to override you anyway because you don't know
no.
because your auto-generated alt text is woeful. Maybe an image of a person. Well, that gives
Oh,
me no information whatsoever.
yeah.
And I think the worst thing people can do is think, oh gosh, I need to use image descriptions. I'll use AI to write it for me.
Oh
And I'm
no.
just like, no, just don't go there because I can spot it a mile off, pun
Hmm.
intended, because it goes into so much detail. And not only all of the minute detail, but then the genre and the ambience and the mood of the photo. And it's like, I don't need to know that. And in my head, it's saying this creator, this person is too lazy to learn how to write an image description for themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's not difficult to do. Once you learn, it's not difficult to do.
Mm, yeah.
And
And there's yeah,
the only real kind of exception to that rule are fully blind people
mm.
or people who've got tiny amounts of vision left who are sharing a photo and they can't actually see what it looks like. So they have a genuine reason for asking AI to write that description for them.
And it goes back to putting in having the overlay in your website, isn't it? It's actually it's just it's the getaway, it's the cheap clause, it's the okay, we've ticked the box to accessibility, but we're not really paying it any kind of attention. We're just giving it a little bit of lip service just to show that we've been good boys and girls, and we've,
Yes, we're
we've,
showing willing.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But actually, we're not really into it, and we're not really that bothered.
No.
Um, yes. So you provide online, so you provide your audits, and then you do training as well, don't you? And that's like online and it's face to face, is it?
I've predominantly done them online
Mm,
because that works for me. So that way I'm not restricted by geography. I can work with people anywhere in the UK or
yeah,
around the world. Obviously time zone permitting. Um, but yeah, anyone who's actually open and eager to learn.
yeah.
So yes.
Fantastic. No, that's amazing, and it is. I think. I mean, always love watching your content and stuff like that, and seeing because you don't just sharing about uh, the training side of it. It's also then bringing in your own experiences with
Yeah.
these things as well, isn't it? And talking about it was the
Yeah,
one where what you were
it's
wandering
raising
along.
that
Yeah,
awareness. This is what my reality is like. How do I share that on a daily basis?
yeah,
What I do.
yeah.
People won't know unless you tell them
Mm.
because, we're terribly British and we don't like to ask. Or you can be the polar opposite. And I could be standing at a bus stop and somebody's asking all my personal medical details, what's wrong with my eyes? And I'm like, well, that's for me to know and you not to.
That's just, it's the thing which gets me more than anything else is when you're sat, you could be in a taxi or just sat in a pub or anything like, or just sat somewhere and then someone just comes up to you and says, "Excuse me, can I just?" And it's just like, no, no, don't
No.
finish that sentence. Just, just walk away now, now. Just, no if you're if I'm in a train station and you're asking me what you're trying to guide me to a platform and you want to know how much I can see or whatever, then that's fine. There's a you've got a valid reason to want to know
Yeah.
how much I may or may not be able to see. But don't start talking to me about my diagnosis or the worst one is it's that whole but but you can see a little bit, so you're not really blind.
Again, it's that word blind, isn't it?
Yeah,
The image it conjures up for people is that you are in total darkness.
yeah,
And it's like, no, 73%, no, 93% of people
93.
who are blind can actually see something.
Yeah.
And that blows people's minds.
It does. Yes. Yeah. No, it really does. And people just can't compute that, can they?
No.
And that actually, there is really being blind is you can't read the top letter on the chart. If that's sort of the threshold, isn't it, to being
Yeah.
severely sight impaired? And so, if that there's a long way between not being able to read that big letter A and not being able to see anything at all. There's a massive,
Yeah.
massive space there, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah. They bring out a special eye chart for me and then have to like take so many number of steps away from me. And then like, can you see this? I'm like, no. And they just keep progressively getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
I had it,
They
and it
hand
was
me my monocular and they're like, right, can you read the chart now? And I'm just like whizzing down it.
yeah.
It's just something so simple can
Mm.
make such a massive difference, but it's not practical to walk around with a pair of binoculars strapped to your face constantly.
No, no, it's not really. And as you say, yeah, you end up looking like the Monopoly Man or someone like that, don't you?
Yes.
With your monocle. Oh, fantastic, lovely. Okay, so I think I've loved this, and this has been so much fun chatting away. So I think just a couple of final areas. So it sounds like there's a lot going on with the training space and that's is it something what's the feedback that you get from the training? Is it sort of well received? Do you get like
Yes, it
moments
is.
of shock almost?
I can hear the light bulbs go on
Yeah.
when I'm training. So I did some training for a department at my local county council recently, and they actually were already doing a pretty good job with their social media content, and they were
Mm,
including image descriptions, which were fantastic. However, there's always room for improvement, and
yeah.
we're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming to make things as accessible as possible for the widest number of people.
Mm, mm,
So I teach from a visually impaired perspective, but I will always add in things that will help improve accessibility for the hearing impaired, for people who have got dexterity issues, mobility issues as well.
yeah.
Things like buttons on websites to like click here for this or adding something to a cart, if that button is so tiny that you can't, if somebody who's got a tremor, so say somebody with MS, or I've got a friend who's got quadriplegic cerebral palsy,
Hmm.
she's like, if that button isn't big enough, I cannot tap on it on her iPad. And she's like, that means then that I can't be independent. I have to get somebody else to do it. And
Yeah.
it's just raising that awareness of what people can do to improve. So the local county council, they were creating graphics. So I was giving them tips on how actually they could make their infographics more visually accessible.
Hmm.
Because a lot of people who are neurodivergent, they find a lot of information crammed onto a graphic just too overwhelming.
Yes. Yeah.
And then you've got colour blindness. So it affects 1 in 8 males in the
Hmm.
UK. And if you've got colours that aren't great, that don't work together, then that information is going to be lost. So again,
Yes.
that's a whole chunk of people that you're not reaching.
Yeah.
And I always like to include screen recordings
Hmm.
when I do my training. So I will take a piece or two of content that they may have already created, and I will let them hear what it sounds like with the screen reader.
Yeah.
And it's literally like, oh, and you can hear the pennies dropping and the lights going on, and it then makes sense to them.
Yes.
And it's then tangible for them that they can hear it.
Yeah, and that's a really good point as well, as it's giving them that first-hand experience almost of the of the way things are perceived by, or the way things are seen by sort of somebody with a visual impairment, because it's that light bulb moment, that penny dropping, and you go, I thought I was doing really well at this, but actually, when essentially you present it to them and show it, and you go, oh, this is not. Um, well, very rarely is it any good. I mean, most of the time there are challenges there, and there's definitely room for improvement. And so, by being able to provide it to them directly, then that just gives them that opportunity to really start to think about how things can be improved. And quite often as well, I think you find that once somebody, just by presenting it to them, that's half the battle. And they're already thinking about, because we already know, and we're already always thinking about how we can improve things. So they're already starting to make those connections themselves. And so essentially it's almost like reinforcing and supporting and giving them, the fine detail with the training, isn't it, in
Yeah.
that respect?
Yeah. I think the biggest takeaway for them was including a video description.
Hmm.
So a lot of what they share can be animations with a
Yeah.
voiceover,
Hmm.
which is fantastic that there's a voiceover. But if there's then information on the animation, like text or whatever it might be, that isn't included in the voiceover,
Yeah.
that's a lot of information that isn't accessible.
Hmm.
And if the caption accompanying it doesn't give you that transcript, then you're only getting half the picture, so to
Yeah.
speak, half of that message.
Hmm.
So again, for them, it was realizing that, oh, actually, we need to include video descriptions so that people can fully understand what it is that we are sharing.
Yeah.
And it's the same with, I work a lot with small businesses as well. And for them, it's just like, oh my gosh, I hadn't thought of that, particularly product-based businesses.
Hmm.
I saw a lot of it on the run up to Christmas, and particularly on Instagram, was like people were showcasing new products, festive ranges, etc. The caption would read, "New products launched, click the link in the bio."
Hmm.
And it'd be a lovely reel which was showcasing their products. I had no idea what they were.
Yeah.
I was like, if you'd included a video description, I might be more inclined to actually click through to your link on your bio and maybe shop with you.
Hmm.
But no, I'm not going to.
Yeah. And I think especially when some of these organizations, when they do sort of push themselves as being, um, diverse, being inclusive, and
Mm.
then suddenly it's just like, well, you're inclusive. There's more to be done. I mean, when you talk about it, if you are truly inclusive, then that's not just to one group of people, that's to, you've got a big piece of work on your hands, because there are lots and lots of people you need to be in order to make that work. And what works for one, um what works for one set of disabilities or one set of people doesn't necessarily work for everybody. So you do
No,
need
it's
to
not a
have that.
one size fits all
No, it
solution.
isn't.
No.
Yeah. Hmm. So where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram. I'm there as, oh, I know I've got to get this right. Am I impact.with.lou or am I impact hyphen with? I think I'm a dot with Lou. Anyway, you'll find me on there. If you stalk Chris and go to his followers, you'll find me there. You can also find me on LinkedIn under Louise Plunkett. And I've got a number of free resources available and also some masterclasses that I've recorded as well that are available to purchase and download. And the top seller being how to write an image description because
Yeah.
people they tie themselves up in knots with it and they get really stressed and overwhelmed and they end up doing nothing. So I've simplified it all. I've got a masterclass with a workbook, and you can
Excellent.
watch it as many times as you like and stop and start it until you nail it. And nothing makes me happier than when I've worked with a client
Hmm.
and I'm scrolling on social media and I'm listening to posts, and then I hear a post that they've done and they've included the image description. I'm just like, "Yes," and I do a little happy
Yes.
dance. I'm like, yay!
Yeah, my work here is done.
Fantastic. They might not always remember every time, and that's okay. We're only human.
Yeah,
It's a
exactly.
habit that you have to learn how to do.
Hmm.
It's like brushing your teeth before you go to bed. You didn't
Yeah,
automatically learn that. That was a habit that you had to
it
develop.
was.
And it
But
can,
I have learnt about putting toothpaste on my
you
tongue, though.
have, you
That's good.
have.
Yes.
It's a complete game changer, I tell you. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is revolutionary.
Yeah.
It saves so much mess.
Oh, that's amazing. Yes. No, fantastic. No, and please do. Yeah, if people are listen to this and want to find out more, please do go and check out Lou's details and have a look at those masterclasses and get involved because by starting to add these descriptions in and by starting just these baby steps to make content websites more accessible, you're just including just such a large group of people who otherwise we'd be cut off from this stuff. So it is amazing, and I love absolutely love sort of seeing the your posts and everything online, and especially love the one when you're talking about was it last week, a few weeks ago when you were on the beach and you ended up falling down a hole. Which it's not that bad, but
Yes. Yeah,
oh
I just
dear,
didn't see it, and I was just like, "Oh, Upsy Daisy,
yeah.
mind."
There we go. But that's what's amazing about the cane, isn't it?
Oh, yes,
Exactly. Anyway, no, it's been lovely to chat, Lou, and thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and hopefully it's been a bit of fun as well. And yeah, thank you so much for joining.
you're welcome. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you for inviting me on.
Excellent. Right. So, thank you, everybody. This has been Blind Man with a Backpack in conversation with Lou Plunkett. Um, please go and check out her details on Impact with Lou. You can sort of find her if you going through my Blind Man with a Backpack. You should be able to find Lou's information there. If you want to find out any more about anything that I do or any of reading my blogs or articles or anything like that, you can visit my website, blindmanwithabackpack.uk. If you want to reach out and have a chat and to get involved in anything as well, you can drop me an email, chris@blindmanwithabackpack.uk, or drop me a message or anything on the socials. Anyway, thanks very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure, and goodbye.